for a very long time, I was quietly suffering. And everything looked so great. You mentioned that I was a cover girl and that I was on Playboy and I was this, I was that. But during all those times where you would think that would have made me the happiest, or that would have, it's like you have everything you think, but really during the highest times in my life, I was at the lowest internally. And I didn't know why.
Hello, and welcome back to You Need a Counselor podcast. My name is Julie Johnson. I'm the president and founder here at Heart and Solutions. We are a counseling agency here in Iowa. We are still doing outpatient mental health counseling via phone, via computer, and also in person in any of our 6 office locations and in schools.
And I'm Chrissa. I am the Vice President at Heart and Solutions in charge of our BHIS department. So BHIS stands for Behavioral Health Intervention Services. And that's the program where we go in home and work with children ages 4 through 18 on different behavioral skills for the child and their family as well. And this is our podcast, You Need a Counselor. So we are designed for people curious about counseling, but have barriers keeping them from experiencing the benefits of counseling. Our mission is to share stories about counseling, good, bad, and indifferent, and spread the message that everyone can benefit from mental health and behavioral health counseling services.
Yeah, so we post on Sunday nights, anywhere you listen to podcasts, and also the video will be on YouTube. So Sunday nights at 5 p.m. Central, go ahead and set your timer and batch up whatever unpleasant task you hate doing. Putting away laundry is usually what Chrissa and I are doing on a Sunday night. That way you have clean clothes for the week. But also, it gives you that entire week to get in touch with your counselor. So if you haven't seen your counselor in a while, that gives you that entire week to get called, get scheduled with them, or to get in touch with any of our guests from the week. So today we have a special guest. We've got Deborah Driggs here. And we're very, very excited about this guest. Let me give you a little bit of background on Deborah before we invite her on. So Deborah is a Playboy Centerfold and a Covergirl. She is an actress. She was a figure skater professionally. She is a model, was a professional dancer. She's a mother. Our guest today has done it all. And so we are very, very excited to hear these stories. And right now, Deborah works with people, helping people with business strategies. Deborah's message of not taking no for an answer is a business strategy that we definitely want to hear more about on this show as well. So welcome, Deborah. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me and allowing me this time and allowing me to be a part of this whole beautiful thing. I was listening to your introductions and I'm excited to learn more about you and what your mission statements are, because it sounds so beautiful and rewarding.
Well, thank you. Yep, we definitely believe in counseling, behavioral counseling, and mental health counseling.
And we know that I have a whole staff of counselors. So.
Cool.
Perfect.
I love that. And I know that you had mentioned that you have had a great counseling experience. And so we would love to.
Yeah, a few. I think I've been in and around counseling for a very long time. And I think, at my age now at 58, growing up, counseling had a bad sort of rap. If you got sent to your counselor, in high school or school, it was a bad thing. And so when I look back on that, what had shifted now today, I think it's shifting so much more in a positive direction. But when I was going to high school, if you got sent to your counselors because there was something wrong with you. And I think that's such a shame, that, my generation, I think, will relate to that, because counseling should be a good thing. I think everybody needs mentors, counselors, therapists, programs. There's so much, thank God today with this arena we're now in virtually, we have so many things and so much access to help.
Mhm.
And it's the hardest thing today for people to say, I need help. It was very hard for me. I'm sure you've read in part of my story that for a very long time, I was quietly suffering. And everything looked so great. You mentioned that I was a cover girl and that I was on Playboy and I was this, I was that. But during all those times where you would think that would have made me the happiest, or that would have, it's like you have everything you think, but really during the highest times in my life, I was at the lowest internally. And I didn't know why. I didn't know why. And I didn't know that there was nothing really available at that time. Everything was, oh, just suck it up. Oh, just, and I had coaches that would say things like that to me. I had very strict coaches that wanted, their motives were right. I don't look back and think badly of how they coached, but we were coached into being coached, and we were coached into doing something a certain way. And that doesn't work with creative people and with athletic people. Sometimes it doesn't work for everybody. Some people love that and thrive off of it. But for me, it was too much. It was too harsh. And so I burned out. I got tired of being yelled at home, yelled at school, and yelled at in the ice skating rink. It was like all too much. I went to a private Catholic school, and then I had two parents that were completely gone in their own worlds. And then I'd go to the ice skating rink, and it was like demand, demand, demand. And so when, the good news is that now when I look back on that and when I coach people today, I can pull from all those experiences. And I think that's what makes a really great coach, is when you share your own life stories, your own life struggles, and you're relatable. So when I have somebody call me and go, I really need to talk to you, it's because I'm relatable. They understand that I've been there. I've been rock bottom. I've pulled myself up. I've gone back down to rock bottom. It's a process. And mental illness is a process. It's a practice. I don't think that we ever really, it's like, okay, I'm free, I'm happy, I'm joyous, I have no more problems. And problems are gifts. Really, if we look at it, if we reframe these things, when I look back at some of the hardest times in my life, what they were gifts, that I didn't know that they were gifts. I thought they were disasters, the most tragic thing that could happen. No, it's not the most tragic thing that could happen. There are so many other things that could have been worse, right? But with that, I say that because we don't ever want to compare our experience to something more tragic. That's not the goal. The goal is to own our feelings and then to try to understand how we can progress and get better. And so everyone's problems are meaningful to me. So when somebody brings me things to evaluate or things to look at, I'm just a guide. I don't have all the answers to all the problems, but I can use examples from my life, and I can use some life stories to maybe shed some experience, strength, and hope on somebody else's situation.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that you talked about, for you, how coaching was helpful or not helpful, and also validating that, yeah, there are some people who love that type of coaching. And then there are other people who need more validation of who they are, or more freedom of expression to reach that same goal and reach that same target. But that we all have such different ways of getting there. And so I love what you're saying about bringing that now into your own coaching and being able to, each individual person that you're working with, being able to give them, or hopefully try to help them in the way that is going to be helpful to them.
Yeah. And just to be really clear, I want people to know that I have a coach. I have mentors. I'm constantly being coached. I'm actually in a coaching 90-day program right now. And it's because I have to keep upping my game. I can't go, oh, I got a couple tools, I'm good. No, I'm constantly raising the bar just a little bit more, and not like I used to do in the past, where it was like I went from 0 to 100 and I had to get perfect quick. I don't do that anymore because I suffer from that perfectionism, like, let's just do it. Let's do it now. Why? Like, I don't want to wait 6 months. Let's just get it now. And so I had to slow myself down, because that's part of my illness. And I don't like to use that word, but I'm going to use it just for this show. That's part of my mental struggle, is that I want to get to the top of the peak quick. And so what I've learned is that to be the best, to be a professional. Let's just put it this way. There's a big difference between an amateur and a professional. Professionals have coaches.
Yeah.
They just do. Okay. Tiger Woods has 3 coaches. Why? He's one of the best golfers in the world. He's a professional. He knows that he constantly has to grow and be coached. And so that's kind of how I differentiate between a professional and an amateur. Professionals have coaches. They're continually upping their game, and they're working and working to continually be better, because as we know, living in the world we live in, things are changing rapidly. And it's really hard sometimes to keep up with all the different things that are changing and happening. And this is a great statistic too. I just heard this, and I was really fascinated by it. That today, more than ever, in today's world, coaching, therapy, counseling, whatever you want to call it, is needed more today than ever before. And there's not enough of us.
Yeah.
So wrap your head around that think about that, counseling, therapy, mentorship, life coaching, whatever you want to call it, is needed more today than ever before. And there's not enough. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So, I thought that was really profound. And I don't actually think it has the pandemic, I think, played into it a little bit, but I think it was already there. That just kind of put the cherry on top of something that's really needed today.
Why do you think it is that coaching and mentorship and mental health counseling, behavioral health counseling, why do you think it is that it's so necessary today, even more than 10 years ago or 20 years ago?
Well, I'll get in trouble for why I think,
That's what we want to hear.
This is okay. So let me just preface that by saying, this is my opinion, right? This is what I think. I think there's a huge struggle with labeling every single thing that is wrong with somebody today. Everything has a name and then a pill. And so, how many people do you know that are depressed, that take depression medicine and they're still depressed? Right? I mean, everybody would raise their hand. So I think that's why I think today more than ever, because we've got all these different labels, we've got all these different quick fix type things. And then we've got epidemics with opioids and stuff like that. And kids don't understand the epidemic. They don't, listen, a 16-year-old is not going to go, let me educate myself before I start to take opioids, and let me do this research before they don't do that. And then they just ingest these pills, and half of them are laced with fentanyl. And next thing you know, we've got an epidemic of kids can't breathe. It's not that they were trying to kill themselves, but you're taking things that you don't understand what it's actually doing to your body. You have no clue. Mm-hmm. And so, I was watching this documentary. The name of it might have been called The Opioid Crisis, but it was something about this woman who, she's a paramedic, or, gets called out to all these 911 calls in her town. And I watched this over a year ago, so I'm just going to piecemeal this together. But anyway, when she gets there, what she said, what people don't understand is people take the opioid, and it's usually laced with fentanyl. And what fentanyl does is it stops the breathing. It's not that the kids are ODing on the drug, their breathing stops. And then so now they're carrying these things to shoot the kids to get them to breathe or react or come back, or adults or whoever. But I can't remember the name of the documentary, but it scared me. I thought, wow, there are millions of people out there right now that are ingesting things that they have no idea. So then we go to, what is the root of that, right? Why are we taking things? Why are we drinking? And for somebody like me who suffers from addiction and suffers from, the addiction of everything, really, people go, oh, you have an addiction to alcohol. Well, it's not really just alcohol. It's like, I grew up with my first addiction was attention, watch me dance, watch me ice skate, watch me act, watch me model, watch me this. It's like more and more and more. And then that just turned into something else that would calm me down, And so always looking for something, whether it's shopping, sex, alcohol, drugs, there's a whole epidemic with just that today. And so I actually spent a week at a trauma center in Tennessee. It was called the Week of Living Centered. And I went to work on myself and work on some trauma, some childhood trauma. And I thought, when's a good time to do that now? Even though I'm 58, I just feel like I want to continually grow and figure out, why all the things in my mind, oh, if I just make $1 million, oh, if I just become, the number one salesperson, oh, if I just, I'll be better. And then with so much gratitude, thankfully, I reached some of those plateaus and I still was low and not happy. Why? And so I went on this quest because I was like, I really innately want to be happy. So what is it that was causing me, So I went on this journey. And so at the end of the week, I wanted to continue, right? I had such a profound experience with these counselors, and they didn't really there were a few suggestions, but there weren't really I would have loved if they would have said, yeah, there's an online virtual program, you can get involved, and there's people like you that want to continue. And so I came home, and about 4 weeks later, I woke up at 2 a.m. and I had these 2 whiteboards, and I literally just started writing, and I created a 90-day program. And my team and I are getting ready to launch it. And basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 20 people through a 90-day program of removing all these distractions, all these things. It's not an easy program, obviously, but the only way that you can do this week of living centered that I did is they take your phone and you go through this intense healing for trauma. And what does that mean? That means I'm removed from all the outside world for 1 week. I'm removed from shopping, sex, texting, social media, computer, business, work, traveling, alcohol, drugs, whatever those distractions are. For everybody, it's different. But in this type of a setting, you're removed from everything. And then at the end of the week, you're given back your phone, you're sent off into the real world. And I got this really separation anxiety came over me because I was like, well, I have more work to do. Now what? And so when I woke up in the middle of the night, I thought, I have done everybody else's program out there. Really, literally, I've done quite a few. I've done from Tony Robbins to Master Co to Keith Cunningham to Jay Abraham to, the Living Centered program to silence retreats, yoga retreats. I've done a lot of therapy, counseling retreats. I've been on that path. And so I thought, but there's nothing out there virtually right now that would really, you'd benefit by leaving those other programs. If you wanted to continue virtually online, that's where I come in. And I take people through a 90-day program of really getting centered, because I think when you remove a lot of distractions in your life, and it's really hard to do, I understand with you going to school or working or whatever, but when you remove a few of them, you can really begin to heal. You really can. And in today's world, going back to your original question of why today, why is it so prominent today? We have way more distractions than ever before.
Mm-hmm.
We have way more comparisons, jealousy, envy, because we're looking at other people's lives 24/7, and we're not feeling good about ourselves because we're looking and we're thinking, oh, we're not doing enough. We're not keeping up. look at all these influencers, look at all these people online, look at all these happy people. And we don't really have the real reality of what's really going on in life. We have just distractions. And so I think that really plays into a lot of this mental stuff that's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so interesting how, I can see in your through your journey, and when you talk about, having all of these credentials, right? Doing all of these wonderful creative, artistic expression things and doing them successfully, doing them at such a high level. And then still not feeling the way that somebody from the outside might look at your resume and go, wow, that must feel incredible. And I think it's because, and I think it really well ties into what you're talking about in terms of the distractions of social media, is that, from the outside, we can't judge feeling. From the outside, we can't look at somebody's new car, we can't look at somebody's new house and accurately understand how they're feeling. And I think that your description of, that's when you were feeling the lowest was when you were doing the most, right? In the spotlight.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And
Absolutely.
I love what you're saying too about addiction to addiction, because there are, I think when we say addiction, people think drugs, people think alcohol, and people rarely think work. Right? Like people rarely think applause, or just, there are these things that we do that we distract ourselves with that our society says that's healthy. That's a healthy thing to do, right? You should, get up at 4 a.m. and go to the ice skating rink, right? To all of this stuff. Like
Yeah.
society says that's wonderful. And if you are an achievement junkie, that further perpetuates it, right? Because it's like, oh, society says this is great. And then there becomes this disconnect between, well, I look good on paper, but I feel like this, so I must not be understanding, I must have another level I need to get to, right? Like just constantly having to up, right? Like having to constantly just up our.
Well, this is so true, because when my kids were little, I suffered horribly after my third birth, my third child. I suffered horribly from postpartum. A lot of stuff started coming up. I was depleted. I was emotionally depleted. And I just felt so low and weak. And I just remember, like, that was what I meant about quietly suffering, because even back then, that was in 97, even then I didn't feel comfortable or trusting to tell anybody how I really felt. Because I wanted to appear like I always had it together, and people would validate me with that. They would, when I finally came out of the closet, so to speak, and said, I don't have it all together. I feel suicidal. I'm addicted to alcohol. I don't have self-esteem at the moment. Whatever it was I was going through, when I finally came out, people were like, what? Really? Because you always look like you had it so together. And people would even say to me, I wanted to be a mother because of the way you looked with your kids, and which is a compliment, but that's where you really, I worry when I see somebody who looks like they have it all together. Those people make me worry the most, because it's, and I feel this really deep inside of me, is, when you do feel that way, and it's kind of the Robin Williams syndrome, it's like, you don't want to disappoint anybody because you appear to be a certain way and your body is tired of it. You get tired of it. And then you don't want to admit that there's something really going on, and you don't ask for the help, and then it's too late, and it's so sad to me, because I went down this rabbit hole. So I'm speaking again from experience. I went down this rabbit hole, and when I went through that really hard time in my life, when I was just at rock bottom, and I had people going, wait, what? Like everything you touch was turning to gold, literally. I mean, I married the man of my dreams. I have 3 beautiful children. I was, like you said, I was on the cover of a few magazines, I got to be in movies and commercials and TV and all of that. Things that people would give up everything to do. And I wasn't happy. I was not happy. I'd have moments, I'd have glimpses, I'd have these moments. And then 10 minutes later, it was like, oh, that didn't last very long. And then they get shorter and shorter. Those periods of like feeling joy get less and less and less. And then by the time I got to my 40s, it was like, I was tired. So yeah, I think it's really important to recognize that when people look like they have it all together, and that's why social media is not the place to go for validation or for, self-esteem or any of that, because it's not real. It's just not. And you're right, addictions come in many forms. And a lot of people don't even know they have an addiction. They just don't even know. They're not aware. I became extremely aware that there was something wrong at the age of 40. So I've been doing this now for 18 years. I've been on this search for a while because I knew there was something not right. And going back to, in 97, there not being really anything out there. The other thing that kind of made me kind of hold back from getting help was Brooke Shields had come out with the fact that she was suffering from postpartum. And then Tom Cruise went on Oprah Winfrey and kind of put it down like, well, she shouldn't be taking medication for that. And, and I remember thinking, well, I'm not going to tell anybody about what I'm going through then, because my God, if Tom Cruise feels that way and Brooke Shields is suffering and it doesn't look good, and those were the examples back then, and you can see how influential that can be when you have people like stars saying what's right and what's wrong. And, I was just so depleted that I was listening to everything and anything. And that was not the right direction to be listening to. And so I use that as an example because that was our example in 97, 98, 99. Those were people were talking about things like that and putting it down and all of that. And getting help is nothing to poo-poo. It's a necessity. And by the way, some of the examples, I will say this: if there's anybody in your life that's comes across like they're very know-it-all or they're judgmental or they just wouldn't tolerate certain things, or everybody has that person in their life that they know. That's not the person you go to for help. Mm-hmm. That's the person you avoid because they probably need more help than you, and we all have those people in our life that will shut us down and tell us to suck it up, or, tell us that, oh, I have no tolerance for that kind of behavior, or da 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 da, or, and they have no idea really what the real journey of mental illness, addiction, counseling, even if it's just strictly one thing, if it could be just I have borderline depression. A lot of people have borderline depression. A lot of people don't. A lot of people go through life and they're kind of like, they go through life and they do their thing and they don't really suffer from any of it. Mm-hmm. But that's not our story in this room. Our story in this room is, we're around a lot of suffering. And so what can we do to kind of minimize that and get people to kind of realize that being of service and being helpful and being contributing is so much more valuable.
Yeah, I think, what you're talking about in terms of Brooke Shields and Tom Cruise, gosh, I remember that too. And it reminds me even more recently too of Meghan Markle and the vulnerability that she demonstrated sharing her story and then some of the reactions, right, that came out, and I went, we're still not there, because there are, these reactions to her sharing her story. And so, yeah, addiction is so challenging. I know that before I really came to terms with accepting the addictions in my life, I felt like, I couldn't understand somebody else's addiction. I felt like if somebody else was addicted to heroin, right, for example, and I would go, I don't understand that. Or I don't understand the choices there. And then when I came to face with my own addictions, I went, oh, there is no choice. I have no choice when it comes to my addictions, and I can 100% understand heroin addiction, right? Because the things that I'm addicted to, I am just as addicted to as any drug or any any other substance. I'm allergic to it, and I think that people think about addiction, they think about substances, right? And things that we would put in our body. But I think what is coming up more and more now are addictions to behaviors, addictions to trains of thought, to areas of focus in our lives, right? What are we thinking about becomes addictive. Or what are we looking at becomes addictive. And they're not what people typically think about with addiction. Like you said, often we don't know what our addictions are. I like the question, what do you go to when you're distressed? So if you are sad, if you're angry, if you're fearful, what do you go to? And a lot of times that is kind of a key to what some of those addictions might be. And then also, what do you go to when you're happy? What do you go to when you're celebrating and when you are joyous? Because those can be some keys as to those things that might be addictive for us.
Everything that you just said is completely in alignment, with the thoughts, right? Everything starts with a thought. And so I have great questions with that. I'm always like, well, is it a fact, or is it just an emotion? And if we can kind of get on the clear page right away with, okay, is this emotional or is this factual? Is this something we want to avoid, or is this something we want to move towards? Is this, because when you start getting really brutally honest with things, I had somebody call me, and she wanted to tell me the whole story, right? And so I'm getting really good at it. For a while, I was listening, like really getting involved in the story. And finally, I'm to a point in my coaching now where I say, you know what, I don't need to know the whole story. What is it that you want to avoid? Let's just stay right on your side of the street. I don't need to know what they're doing. It's not part of the story. The only part of the story that's really relevant is our side of the story. Because the minute and you probably know this from counseling, and I know it, it's the minute people go on to the other side of the street, the story just perpetuates. Story gets bigger, and it's like a snowball effect. So if I can keep people on their side of the street, what's your part in it? What do you want to avoid? What do you want to achieve? Okay, then let's write out those things. It doesn't matter what other people do, because other people are going to disappoint us, lie to us, cheat us, mess us up, cause heartbreak. We're not going to avoid any of that, but we can avoid how we react to it. And so if we write all that out and we get very clear about that, the next time these things happen, we won't have the same reaction, because we're a little bit more clear about our part in it. And so, because it's really hard when you're really counseling, coaching, helping somebody else out, and they're so caught up in a story that they can't really see, let's move over here and let's, do you want it to be fixed or not? Like, do you want to feel better, or do you want to keep replaying the story, the tape? Because I can let, if you want, I can sit here for an hour, charge you the same amount of money, and you can keep telling me the story over and over again. It's not going to change. It's the same story. And my reaction to it isn't going to change either. It's the same story. And by the way, that for me is so profound, because it's my story as well. right? I used to replay this in my head all the time. Well, he did this. When I went through my divorce, oh my God, it was all his fault. I'm sure that there are a lot of people out there going, well, she's funny because that's all she did was talk about. And I always go, well, disasters are masters. At some point we have to learn the lesson.
I like that. Disasters are masters.
Well,
I've never heard that. That's wonderful.
Yeah. Well, I was quite the disaster, I can tell you. I mean, I was full of rage and anger and it was the type of anger and rage that when it would happen, it would baffle me. I'd go, why did I get so completely unglued over that? Because if I really wrote about it, it wasn't that big of a deal. But for me, I went out of my body, saw red, completely unglued. And why? So that becomes really kind of the whole, I get excited about that now. I'm like, okay, this is getting me charged. Why? Now I get excited about it, where before, oh my God, you didn't want to be in anywhere near, because my voice went up like 12 octaves and I was like an Italian woman going completely off the rails. And today it's like, I'll get upset about things, but in a different way now. I might have to go and sit quietly and just kind of go, okay, my body's shaking. I'm feeling upset. Where's this coming from? Okay, this is kind of exciting because this might be, some type of trigger. What is it? What are you trying to tell me? I get really into it. And I'm sure that has a lot to do with my NLP training, which is, the neuro linguistic programming training. And I went through that all through 2021 because I really I want to learn everything. I want to learn every technique. I don't want to just be one, because you never know who's going to end up getting on a call with you for a coaching session and what they're going to bring to the table. So I want to have a lot of tools in my box. If I'm going to try and help somebody, right? If I'm going to help somebody, I want to have a lot of things available to me. And so I ended up doing this NLP training, and a lot of it is, figuring out where in your body is it, what's it trying to tell you, and I do that to myself on a regular basis, because somebody who suffers from addiction, I have to continually check in with myself, check in with other people, let them know the crazy stuff that, I'm conjuring up in my head, because it can get pretty unwise up here,
Absolutely. Nope, I'm with you. I cannot trust my own thinking. I need to have others around me. And to your point about professionals and coaching and having those people, that team around us as professionals in whatever if it's dance or modeling or coaching or being a therapist or being a teacher or whatever it is, having that team around us is so important, because we can't trust what's going on in here, right? If I think something and I think it's long car rides usually get me, because I'll get in the car and I'll have 10 hours or whatever to just stew in things, right? And so those are the times I gotta be calling somebody and going, okay, here's what my brain is telling me. What do you think? And then sometimes they'll be like, what? What is that? And it helps to have that perspective, that outside perspective.
Absolutely. And guess what? I'm not going to go to somebody who has never worn my shoes, who has never gone through a horrible divorce, who has never suffered from addiction, who has never dealt with reinvention, reinventing themselves in their career. Why would I go to those people to tell me how to think? I want to go to the people that have suffered through what I'm suffering through, so they can go, oh yeah, okay, here we go. Let's talk about that, Yeah.
And I think that's another reason why coaching now and building a team now, it is easier than 10 years ago, 20 years ago. It takes the work to do it. But, somebody who lives on the other side of the world, who has been through the same or similar experience that you're going through right now, and can go, well, here's what I did. Here's what I did that I would recommend. Here's what I did that I would not recommend. Right. And that person could live in Australia, or that person could live in Texas, and we can find them now. Whereas, 20 years ago, we could talk to the people that we worked with, or that we went to church with, or that we saw in town. And that was it, or our family.
Yeah. And then you had to be really careful, because like I said, there was a lot of judgment.
Yeah.
Like, just hold it together, don't, what would the neighbors think? That was a big thing when I was growing up. What would the neighbors think? Who cares what the neighbors think? You know what I mean? Yeah. But that was a big, can you imagine in the 70s? That was a big deal, what people thought, what the neighbors would think,
Yeah,
you look at old movies, even if you watch old movies or old TV shows from the 70s, everything was perfect. In a perfect box, don't rock this world. They're one of my all-time favorite movies, speaking of counseling and therapy and suicide and mental health and trauma, whatever it is, was I remember seeing a movie. I was in high school, and to this day, it's one of my favorite movies, one of the most beautiful screenplays ever written. And it was Robert Redford's first directorial debut. And this movie won the Academy Award. It was called Ordinary People, with Tim Hutton and Mary Tyler Moore and Donald Sutherland. And basically, the brother was on a boating trip with his brother, and they got to bad weather, and one of the brothers died. And the other brother couldn't live with himself, so he tried to kill himself. So the movie is about him going through counseling and going to therapy. And then the parents, the dad was real supportive of it, but the mom was like, well, what is that going to cost? And, we don't talk about it. They were in an upper class suburban neighborhood in Chicago. We don't talk about it. And I remember watching this movie in high school, and the message that I got from that movie was so profound, because here you have this kid who's suicidal, who wants to die, and you have a mom who's saying, nobody needs to know this. This is going to make us look bad. And this poor kid is suffering. And it just broke my heart. And you could see why this movie won the Academy Award, because what? You know what I mean? And then he tries to kill himself again in the movie, and he doesn't succeed, and he ends up calling the therapist. And he goes in the middle of the night to the therapist's office, and he's crying and he's talking and, blah, blah, blah. And at the end, he finally says to the therapist, can I really trust you? He goes, you can trust me. You can count on it, and it was so, like, you could just cry watching this scene. And I've seen the movie several times, and I cry every time, because it's like, that was the time period that we lived in. Could you really trust? Who could you trust? Because people were like, oh, you have a problem. We don't want to, you need to be over there because we're perfect over here. And that was really, and this was coming from this kid's mother. They were at a dinner party, and the dad was saying, oh, because everybody knew that he tried to kill himself. And somebody said to the dad, how's your son doing? Oh, he's doing great. He's seen this doctor. And the wife overhears it in the car. She berates him. How could you talk about that? How could you tell people? People don't accept that so easily. I mean, it was like crazy dialogue, and it was so brilliantly written. So it's a really good movie for people to watch, to really understand what we were going through back then. And I think this movie came out in 80 or 81. And that's why I'm saying we didn't talk about this stuff. I didn't grow up with people going, oh, why are you feeling that way? What's going on with you? Nobody cared. It's not that they didn't care. Nobody knew how to approach emotional stuff.
Some of those messages that a lot of us heard growing up, they if we think about a physical ailment, right? If we think about substituting a major depressive episode for cancer diagnosis, right? Those messages would make no sense, right? Like, well, don't go for treatment. What would that look like, right? If you went for chemotherapy, like
Yeah.
what would people think if you went for
Yeah.
chemotherapy? It's like,
we're gonna have to, we're gonna have to shave your head. So no,
right,
no. And you're gonna be throwing up all the time. No, no, I don't want that mess.
exactly. Right. Like,
I don't want that mess. Oh my God, no.
And it is astounding. I think how far we've come. I think how far we have left to go with mental health stigma and acceptance of being able to ask for and accept support, because there's a lot go in the opposite direction. There are a lot of messages that that sometimes we've heard and we don't even agree with them, but we say them, right? Because we think it that way, or we hear somebody else's voice in our mind, even in our own dialogue with ourselves about our treatment, or about, what it means to ask for support and to accept support. So I think that these are just really, really, I think it's so beautiful that you are out here advocating for mental health awareness, and telling your story.
Well, I write a weekly blog. So I do write a weekly blog, and it's posted everywhere. And I have a website, and my website's going to go live probably the beginning of next week, because I redid the whole website. So all my acting and modeling, all that stuff came off, and it's just this 90-day program. So people can enroll and sign up. And so my goal is, we're in April, is to probably do my first program in June, by the time I get everything really written out the way I want it to go. And what it would entail is people meeting with me once a week, just like this, for an hour to an hour and 15 minutes. And then going through the program that I put myself through. Really, the program that I woke up at 2 a.m. and whiteboarded, and basically what I did was I had one whiteboard where everything got removed, and I had one whiteboard where everything got added. And I said I was going to do it for 90 days, and I ended up doing it for a year, because I thought this is working. After the 90 days, I wanted to keep going because it was working. What was working is that I had a consistent routine of working on my side of the street. I had a consistent routine of really being aware of what was going on. And when you do this work, this is the most profound thing. I had never had this experience before, but one of the things I took away for 90 days was dating. I wasn't going to date anybody for 90 days. I wasn't going to, by the way, people would text me and I just delete it, didn't text them back, because I don't know anybody anything. And, I wasn't dating. So, and I stuck to this. And then 6 months. And then right around 9 months, I went on a date. And let me tell you something. When you do this profound of work, when you really do, and you take the time to heal yourself first, oh my God, it changes your perspective. I would go on a few dates. I started dating this past November, went on a few dates, and it was like, I went, oh my God. One, I felt in my heart that I wasn't quite ready. And two, I was like, oh my God, I've really changed, because all of a sudden now there are things that I'm not attracted to anymore. And I would never have known that if I hadn't put myself through this program. And so that's what I blog about. I write about it. I write about the program. I write about resources. I write about relationships. I write about trauma. I write about addiction. I write about everything. My whole point of doing a weekly blog is brutal honesty, and sharing things that I think other people are maybe thinking, and other people are probably feeling. And it's a resource. It's free. People can go to my website, sign up for my newsletter. You get a free something in your inbox from me, whether it's tips, blogs. And then also the other reason to sign up is so that you're aware that at some point I'm going to do a 90-day program. And if you're suffering from any of the things that we have been talking about this last hour of depression, anxiety, trauma, addiction, relationships gone bad, you're in the middle of a horrible divorce, you just keep bumping up the wall of resistance, whatever it is, this is the program for you, because it's not an easy program. It's simple, but it's not easy, right? Because you're going to have to be disciplined to get the benefits of it. You could sign up and maybe after 1 week go, but to really get the benefits, you got to at least commit to the 90 days of doing this work, because that's when the stuff comes up. That's what I found to be true, is that when I really took the time and removed for 90 days, all these distractions, all this stuff was able to come up. And there were days where I would just sit, literally, I would do my work, and then I would just sit and cry. Or I would just sit and journal.
Yeah.
Or I would just sit and do nothing. Or I would go for a walk, because I had taken social media off the plate, and the only thing I did on social media was post my blog or post a positive affirmation. And the only thing I would listen to on my device was, I have a lot of different binary music and chakra music and healing music. And so I'd put that on, and I would just write. And I wrote through the whole year. I wrote over 100 blogs, and I would feel in myself during those 90 days when things would come up, and I would be resisting or panicking or getting filled with stuff that was really not happening. But there's nothing left when you remove all the distractions except you. Yeah. And if you can't deal with you, we got to figure out why. That's where the juice is, really, I think. It's one thing it's one thing to be really comfortable. Sometimes we need to, this is probably where codependence comes in, is, we get really attached because we're so scared of being with ourselves. But the goal is to be with ourselves first, and then get with somebody else to grow with.
Yeah, absolutely. It's another addiction, right? Codependency, and that not a lot of people think about, not a lot of people know about or think about.
It's huge.
Yeah. And it happens all the time to so many people who don't know it and who wouldn't be identified, because they're usually extremely kind. They're extremely helpful. They're extremely, right? And so these are, again, positive attributes that society says this is what you should be, right? In love and with the person, all of this stuff. But the internal damage that it causes, right, that we can't see from the outside, is so difficult. And I love what you said about, you went to this basically detox from your phone, from relationships, other people, from all of these things. You're doing a detox. And when we think about in alcoholism, if we think about, going in and doing a detoxification, but then coming out and going, well, what now? Right. I still got to go to weddings. I still got to go to dinner with friends. I'm going to have alcohol around me. You come out of these retreats and you're like, I'm still going to have my phone though. And so what I like about what you're doing in your 90-day program is, sounds like you are integrating those things into real life. We get back to our real life.
And I am one of those people that really do suffer. So I need to be in check. Can you imagine? I'm 58 years old and I'm constantly having to put myself in check, because here's the deal. If I would have got sober in my 20s, it probably would have been a lot easier. I don't know this for sure, but if we look at addiction, there are more people that have longer amount of sobriety from the 80s and 90s than if they got sober when all the social media blew up. So when you think about that and you put that in just statistically, if you think about it, what it tells me is that it was much easier to get sober when there was no other distractions. Now, sober from all the distractions, because alcohol and drugs, that's the one that people go, oh, those are the big addictions. But really, it's the other addictions like coda, love addiction, sex addiction, that perpetuate the alcohol and the drugs sometimes. So it can go both ways.
Absolutely.
And so,
and they're not necessarily the most deadly. Alcohol and drug addiction.
People kill themselves over heartbreak. I mean, it's really all encompassing. And that's why it's so serious to really look at all these different, it's like a pie. And I wrote a blog about this. The blog I wrote is called It's All About Pie. And, I start out with saying, we're not talking about homemade cherry pie today. We're talking about a pie where you're looking at each section of your life and you're keeping track of each section, because like you said, some people think that work is not an addiction. It's a huge addiction. If you're putting most of your time and energy into work and that's your pie, and then all the rest of your pie is getting neglected, what happens? Everything kind of falls apart. So we want to make sure that our pie is even. It's even. Every slice is getting some type of attention, whether it's work is getting this attention, my spiritual life is getting attention, my relationships with my kids are getting attention, my physicality, my yoga, my whatever, that's getting it. We really draw it out. And I tell people go, yeah, I got it. I go, no, you don't got it. We got to write it out. You got to have a big, I have a pie on a whiteboard. Because see, when you write it, it's ingrained. When you think about it, it's a thought. It goes away. I have a lot of stuff in my head too, but until I write it down, it's just a thought.
Yeah.
So you have to write it down. You have to visualize it. You have to see it, oh, guess what? I'm looking at my pie, and guess what? I didn't pray. I didn't work out, and I didn't really eat that healthy. Okay. So guess what? Tomorrow's a new day. Those are the three that will get a little bit more attention than me sitting at my desk for 10 hours trying to climb that mountain, So when you see your pie, when you see it visually, when you have it written down, you can check in with yourself or your coach or your counselor or your mentor or whoever it is that's guiding you in your life. And everybody should have some type of guide in their life. The other thing I have on my website is a resource page. So I have so many beautiful resources, from music to books to movies to documentaries to, things that I do. Whatever I do is a resource on my page. If I have a podcast that I think is phenomenal, it's on my page. It's like anytime something affects me in a positive way, it's a resource. So I list it. So when people ask me, well, what do you listen to? I go, guess what? Go to my website, go to my Spotify, all the music I listen to when I write, when I meditate, when I sit in silence, if I want to just play music in the house as background, that's it's called Deb's Den. My playlist is called Deb's Den.
Yeah.
And I worked on that for like a month, putting all my favorite music together. And I think that's the thing that's really cool today, is that there are so many resources. There's really, information is so available to us today. We can do stuff like this. We can be on Zoom together. We can discuss really good topics that could help somebody if this little conversation we're having today helped one person, then we did, and it only took 1 hour to help one person.
Yeah.
That's a miracle.
Yeah, it is.
And
Absolutely.
I find that to be more purposeful for me today in my life than ever being on any cover of any magazine.
I love that. It's beautiful. It's a service-based life that you've created, and a service-based business that you've created here, and it is beautiful. What is your website? What is the web address that people can go to?
It's my name. So it's www.deborah.driggs.com. So it's
perfect.
DEBORAH Driggs.com. So and then on Instagram, I have a page called Deb's Den Official. And that's where all my blogs, it's like a positive little den, that's what I created on Instagram. So, and I talk about creating a den. I talk about that on my website, about creating a space somewhere in your life. And by the way, my space when I first started doing this was just a little corner of a room that I created with the whiteboards and all that. I don't have this big den, it was just a small space, but it was my space. Like, this is where I write. So there's nothing in here that would distract me. There's nothing in here that would make me feel bad. Everything I put in my den is reminders of who I want to be all the time. And I think we forget, because we don't have reminders around us all the time. It's kind of like the theory the minute you buy your car, you see 1,000 of them everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I never saw this car before, but now that I own one, I see it everywhere.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with your den.
Yeah.
The minute you start putting beautiful things, like I have crystals, I have, a whole tray of, love quartz. And then I have things that I have on the wall and my whiteboards, and
it's a 3-dimensional vision board. Is what you've got.
It's everything. It's everything that I aspire to do or be. It's the books that I love. It's the music that I love. It's, I have my wrap nearby if I just want to cozy up. I bought this blanket online because it said it's the most comforting blanket you'll ever use. And I thought, okay, well, that could go in my den.
Yeah.
So it's like, because that's a reminder of what I want to feel. I want to feel comforting. And if I can't give that to myself one day, maybe that blanket will. You know what I mean? It's like, I take from everything. I look at things that other people say or do or whatever. I mean, I can't reinvent a wheel. I can just make it better.
Yeah.
And I think that is the goal, is just to make it better today.
Perfect. So DeborahDriggs.com and Deb's Den Official on Instagram. So everybody can find you there. And then you've got the 90-day program coming out very soon.
Yes.
So we'll be excited to hear about that.
I'm Deborah Driggs, and I definitely need a counselor.
Awesome. Thank you. So do we, by the way. I think everybody can benefit. Counselors, coaches, right? You mentioned Tiger Woods. He doesn't just have one. He has multiple, right? He's got a coach that works on his grip and a coach that works on his swing and a coach that, right? So all of those things are so, so important. And it's building that team around us, coaches, counselors, mentors, that support system around us. So Deborah, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much.
This has been very, very interesting, very exciting episode, and we appreciate hearing about it, and we'll be excited to hear about your 90-day program too and how that goes.
Yes, thank you so much. I really appreciate this time and you allowing me to share my story. So thank you.
Yes, thank you.
If you are in Iowa, go ahead and give us a call if you want to get set up for mental health counseling or behavioral health counseling for your kiddos. So your whole family can be building a team around your family, your kiddos included. So you can give us a call at 800-531-4236, or you can message us at www.heartandsolutions.net.
And like Julie mentioned at the beginning, we post new episodes every Sunday at 5 p.m. Central. So save up whatever task you hate doing and listen to us on Sundays while you get that done. And then we can help convince you to call a counselor and get set up with services that week. And if you have any questions for us, you can reach us on Facebook at You Need a Counselor Podcast or on our Instagram at You Need a Counselor Podcast there as well.
And I would like to add just one more thing.
Yeah.
I would say that task that you get to do.
Yeah, true.
That task that you get to do, we must reframe our language, because it is a gift doing the laundry. It is a gift folding clothes. It is a gift making our bed.
Yeah,
we have to reframe it. So whatever chore you get to do.
You can listen to us at the same time. Yes.
It is a gift having clean clothes.
That's true.
I'll admit to that.
that.
And a gift to be able to physically fold the clothes.
And by the way, nothing will remind you of this more than when your washer machine breaks down.
Oh gosh.
Oh, I really took that for granted, didn't I?
That's right.
True.
Awesome.
Okay, perfect. Well, I'm Chrissa Hunt.
And I'm Julie Johnson, and we need a counselor.
And so do you.
Bye.